Hello everyone, Andrew here, and welcome to today's video where I thought it would be fun to introduce 10 NES games that I associate with summer in some way, or that actually have summer as part of the story. Maybe the characters do something during summer break, or it's just, a bright sunny game that's easy to associate with this time of year. It's the beginning of August, and there's overall not really many game announcements, game releases happening at the moment, so I thought, why not, rather than always looking towards the future and what's coming out next, let's take a trip back to one of my all-time favorite consoles, the NES, which just has so many fantastic games which are so often overlooked, and look at 10 games which I think are worth checking out right now. And because I don't want this just to be a list of, things everyone's already heard about, you're not going to find on this list like Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3, Zelda 1, 2, all the things that I think people have probably, played and watched and just have had absolutely enough of over the years. I'm going to definitely try in this list to introduce things that people probably haven't played before, and things of all different genres and styles. So there's hopefully something for everyone. Hopefully by the end of this video you'll at least have found a couple of games that you think are worth checking out. So with that, also they're not going to be in any particular order. It's just 10 games overall. The last one isn't any better than the first one. They're all great games, and I hope that you'll definitely look into them. But with that said, let's get started. First on the list we have Battle Kid Fortress of Peril, an indie homebrew NES game that came out in the early 2010s. Of course, homebrew, totally legal for this list, although this is actually going to be the only one. I think it's absolutely worth playing though. It's definitely a mix of that Mega Man and I Want to Be the Guy style, with also Metroidvania going on, where you're searching this giant map, looking for power-ups that help you get to new areas, and you have to defeat the 6 bosses before you can then access the final part of the game. It's absolutely fantastic. Anybody who is a fan of action platformers should definitely check it out. I should note that it's not as unfair as I Want to Be the Guy at times. You do die after only one hit, although if you're playing on normal difficulty, there are plenty of save points around, and dying instantly allows you to retry from them, and after a little bit of practice, there should not be any parts of the game which you cannot overcome. It also had a sequel, Battle Kid 2, Mountain of Torment, which is even better than the first one. You can tell that they definitely learned a lot in their experience since the first one, improved upon it, and it's a much more refined game. I highly recommend this one as well. I think you should start with the first one, but if you want to go right to that more refined experience, Battle Kid 2, absolutely a fantastic adventure. So, first games on my list are Battle Kid 1 and also Battle Kid 2 if you just can't get enough of it. The next game is Tombs and Treasure, an adventure RPG text adventure mashup where during summer vacation, your girlfriend's father, who's an archaeologist exploring the ruins of Chichen Itza in Mexico, goes missing in the middle of his research. And just because it's summer vacation and you have the time, you and your girlfriend head over there to look for him and also to solve the mystery that he was investigating, because that's just something that high school kids can do. Why not, right? And it is just an absolutely fantastic adventure. It's something that I'll never forget the first time I played it. There's just an atmosphere about it that hardly any other NES game has ever provided. It's just eerie in a sense. You're traveling around to all these ruins, slowly solving puzzles, finding items, slowly, kind of figuring out what to do, and while you're exploring this giant, almost barren overworld in a way, there's just a strange feeling following you. The game actually originally did include a map, which makes navigating the overworld a little bit easier, but I don't know, I like the eerie feeling of just wandering, not really knowing where you are. It really replicates that feeling of being in a foreign land. Overall though, I have to really compliment this game on story, gameplay, graphics. I had such a blast playing it for the first time, and because I had such a good time, I unfortunately remember everything that happened and where you have to go, what items you have to find, where you have to use them. So I really implore you, if you think this game looks interesting, do not use a guide. Even if things are a little tricky at times, definitely figure it out on your own, and I think it will be a really fantastic experience that is really unique considering, it's on the NES. Not too many games have made me feel this way, so hopefully you enjoy it too. That's Tombs and Treasure on the NES. Third on the list is Crystalis, a game that from the footage you're immediately going to notice looks somewhat like the original Legend of Zelda, though released only a few years later. It definitely does improve on what the Legend of Zelda did quite a bit, with towns and dialogue and much more story than you get out of the first Legend of Zelda. Overall though, what happens is in the year 1997, if you can believe it, there is nuclear fallout, a war kind of destroys the world, and the few survivors continue on not with science anymore, but with magic. And what happens though is in the year 2097, someone decides to combine magic with science and attempt to take over the remaining world. But what happened was, back before the war broke out, a warrior was put into cryogenic sleep, and they awake in the year 2097, where they then travel around exploring dungeons, exploring towns, finding items, power-ups, swords, all sorts of magic, which they then use to defeat the evil. An absolutely fantastic experience, again with great music, gameplay, graphics, a really cool NES experience which you just don't hear too many people talking about these days. So if you're definitely a fan of the same style that games like Zelda 1 had, this is one you should definitely be checking out. Next up, if you thought that Crystalis looked like Zelda 1, you're definitely going to think that the Battle of Olympus looks a lot like Zelda 2, and as someone who personally absolutely loved Zelda 2, because it's different for sure, but I mean there's enough Zelda games out there that follow the traditional formula that I can really appreciate what they were trying to do with Zelda 2. So if you're like me and you really liked that style of gameplay, the Battle of Olympus is absolutely for you. It is just pretty much a Zelda 2 clone in some ways, but also has a really nice personality to it as well. It takes place in ancient Greece, which is being attacked by Hades. So it's your job to travel through dungeons, various cities around ancient Greece, collect things, get stronger, and then of course go and defeat Hades. It even has, towns that look exactly like they're out of Zelda 2, and all sorts of maps that will just make you swear you're playing it, but it is a fantastic game, and also lacks the overhead overworld which Zelda 2 had, which did sometimes kind of break up the experience. It didn't really always seem fitting that, you're walking around this overworld and getting into random encounters, but the Battle of Olympus I think does it much better, where everything is connected and just an awesome side-scrolling map. And there is just so much to explore. You meet various Greek gods like Zeus and such, get power-ups from them, and it just feels really good. Again, getting stronger, building it up, and eventually taking on Hades. This is a fantastic game if you're a fan of action platformers, and especially if you're a fan of Zelda 2, I highly, highly recommend the Battle of Olympus. So with the next game, we're cheating just a little bit. It's not technically an NES game, but it's an 8-bit Konami game nonetheless, which many people probably have not heard of, and that is Arumana no Kiseki, or The Miracle of Arumana, and it is a really, really, really cool game. Again, made by Konami, so it has great graphics, great gameplay, great music. It is incredibly short though, so it's one of those games where it's definitely, the difficulty is what gives it length, but once you're good at it, you can actually beat it in under half an hour. You play as an Indiana Jones type character whose key technique is their ability to throw a rope which can cling onto objects and you can then use to climb to greater heights. It's actually really cool because it's involved in solving all sorts of puzzles, and the levels are actually a lot of fun. You of course along the way also get guns and other weapons which you use to defeat enemies, but this one just always reminds me of summer, and it's absolutely great. I believe that by ROM hackers and fans it has also been adapted into an NES cartridge and has an NES adaptation, but unfortunately this version does not have the great music that the Famicom version does due to using the special Famicom music hardware that the NES does not possess. So if you play this game, I highly, highly, highly recommend doing so with the Famicom Disk System version. That's Arumana no Kiseki. Absolutely great. If you're looking for a challenge, it's really, really good for that. It's not too hard. If you read some articles about it, people swear it's like the hardest thing ever, but it's a great game, and yeah, it's a Konami NES game. People will know how good those usually were, and one that many people probably have not played, so I greatly recommend checking it out. Sixth game on my list is Mega Man 6. I knew I said at the beginning of the video I wasn't going to really include games that I thought people had played before. Of course, Mega Man is a very well-known series, but I feel like when people talk about Mega Man on the NES, it's usually either 2 or 3. The later 3 NES games, 4, 5, and 6, are just generally forgotten or not talked very highly of for whatever reason. Personally, when it comes to 5, I can agree with that. It's my least favorite of the NES Mega Man games, but 4 and 6 I think are absolutely worth a play. And in this case, I really want to talk about 6. The premise here is that a mysterious man named Mr. X, it's not suspicious at all, holds an international robot tournament where robots from all over the world gather, although, surprise, during the tournament Mr. X takes over the robots and uses them to obviously attack the world, which then Mega Man has to go and stop them from. Mr. X also claims that he has been manipulating Wily all this time, that he is the true evil bad guy. So, you know, the stakes are even higher. In the summer though, when many people can't really travel and everyone's kind of stuck indoors, I think this is an absolutely fantastic game to play, because as these robots are from all over the world, the stages are naturally themed from the different countries these robots may have come from, including Japan and such, so you can kind of feel like you're going on a mini vacation by playing Mega Man 6. Overall though, I think it's just a really great game. With the stages are good, I think the robot masters are good, the music is of course top notch, and there's even some replayability this time with secret exits, which if you find all of them, you unlock more special weapons, and there's also splitting paths through stages. So I think there's just a lot offered in Mega Man 6 that most people don't talk about because they're so busy talking about Mega Man 2 and 3. But as mentioned, I definitely recommend, if you haven't played them before, checking out Mega Man 4 and especially 6 on the NES. I think it was a great way to wrap up the NES Mega Man games, and hope that you have fun checking it out. 7th on the list is River City Ransom. Now, beat-em-ups are typically not my genre of choice, and yet this one is just so fun that I definitely have to have it on here. It's a phenomenal NES game, and you can even play 2 players simultaneously, and unfortunately this does usually lead to a lot of screen flicker and lagging, so, you know, your mileage may vary, but just all around, it's a fantastic game. It follows Alex and Ryan, who are on this quest across River City to go and save Ryan's girlfriend. So along the way, you have to defeat all these different rival gangs before eventually getting to the top guy and beating him to get your girlfriend back. It's just so cool. The atmosphere is great. It's really silly, and it just feels really good to play. If you've never played it before, highly, highly, highly recommend it. There's like a money system. You can buy, you know, all sorts of weird food and power-ups, and there's secrets around, and it's open world too, so you really kind of have to explore and find all the different gangs and beat them before you can ultimately go to the school where your girlfriend is being held. Just really fantastic experience. Again, it even has multiplayer, so you can play it with a friend. But River City Ransom, game a lot of people have probably heard of at some point, but if you haven't played it, definitely check it out. For number 8, we have Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Now, I always associate this game with the summer, because the first time I ever beat Mike Tyson was during summer break from school, so I kind of always think about this game whenever summer break comes around. Again, it's a game that many people have probably heard of these days, especially with, I almost said Pit, with Little Mac being such a prominent character in the Super Smash Bros. Series these days, but it is just phenomenal. You will just feel so good as you figure out the strategies for overcoming all the different boxers and eventually work your way through the circuits up to the top, where you'll eventually reach Mike Tyson, who you will not be beating on your first try or maybe even 10th try or anything like that. You definitely have to work at it to overcome these different bouts, but when you do, you will feel absolutely fantastic. Again, it is just such a fun game that even if you're not into boxing and fighting and such, it's just so easy to pick up and have fun with. Figure out the strategies for beating all the different fighters, and it will be an experience that you never forget if you get to the end and beat Mike Tyson. So number 8, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I mean, there also is the non-Mike Tyson version where you beat Mr. Dream at the end, but that's totally, you know, it's a lot less exciting, I think. So the Mike Tyson version, definitely the one I recommend. Hopefully you'll check it out. Number 9 on the list is 1943, the Battle of Midway, based on the arcade game of the same name. Of all of the shoot-em-ups on the NES, 1943 is absolutely my favorite. It is just really fun, it looks great, it plays great. It definitely gets difficult. Starts off pretty easy in like the first level or two, and then the difficulty really starts getting up there, and there are a lot of stages. It's longer than the original arcade version, and it's actually more of a combination of 1943 Battle of Midway arcade game and its Japanese-only arcade sequel, 1943 Kai. And it definitely combines those two games together and even adds in some elements that weren't in either of them in terms of the stats system, where at various points throughout the game, you're given the option to add stats to various areas like offense, defense, special weapon time, the variety of special weapons that you have access to, and just all these things combined just make for a really fantastic experience. So if you're in the shoot 'em ups, I cannot recommend this game enough. I think that real awesome video game experiences come from those times when you have to work at it, otherwise you're not seeing that ending sequence. So in terms of that kind of philosophy, 1943 is a game I highly recommend in that area. So only one more game to go. So here we are, the last game on our list, and anyone who knows me should definitely have noticed by this point that there is a very, very, very important game to me that definitely has summer undertones in it that is missing from this list and would absolutely not be complete without it. And that is Star Tropics, my #1 favorite NES game. It is just so fantastic, and it's all about summer. You play as Mike Jones, a 16-year-old boy who goes to visit his archaeologist uncle. I realize a lot of games that I like have archaeologists in them. His archaeologist uncle, who lives on a tropical island and is currently studying various mysteries there. Although after you arrive, you realize that he has actually been abducted by aliens, and thus your quest begins through the tropics and even through space to rescue him and solve the mystery that he was working on. And absolutely everything about this game just screams adventure, epicness, fun. You know, I cannot get enough of Star Tropics. It is great. Star Tropics also included a letter attached to the back of the instruction booklet from your uncle, which when you dip in water, actually reveals a secret code that you need to progress in the game. Now this is really neat. I love the kind of inclusion of a real world element needed to beat the game. Some people kind of call it, you know, DRM from back in the day, so you couldn't just rent the game, and if you didn't have this letter, you weren't able to beat it. But I think that it actually is just, once again, one of those, you know, really cool parts of the game that wasn't an experience you really got with many other NES games. Dipping a letter in water to get a code needed to proceed, it just really makes the game all that much more immersive. And just everything from story to music to the gameplay, which once again, you know, it takes some getting used to, but if you take that time, you will realize that there's actually just so much you can do with Star Tropics' control scheme. If this is a game that you have not checked out, I cannot recommend it enough. It is an absolutely phenomenal adventure even today, and it just really defines my, you know, love for adventure and made me who I was as someone who beat it back when I was like 4 or 5 years old. My whole life has just been looking to Star Tropics and wanting to have adventures just like the one you go on in this game. So Star Tropics will always be an incredibly important game for me, and if you play it and enjoy it, that would mean so much to me. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this list of NES games that I think fit the summer mood, and if you find even, you know, like one game on this list that you go on now and have fun playing, I think that makes it all worth it. There's just nothing wrong with going back and playing these awesome games from the past, because it's not always about, you know, newer is better. There's definitely some great things to be found back there as well. So I hope that you enjoyed this. Please feel free in the comments to post some of your favorite NES games, particularly ones that you think are fun to play during the summer. And I hope to see you next time for more retro gaming stuff. So thanks, and see you later. Thank you so much once again for checking out my videos. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as it really helps my channel out. With that said, hope to see you next time.